I think that there is always that aspect of withdrawal because the thing is with anything that we don't understand fully and anything that's unpredictable, which I suppose social interaction is the biggest source of unpredictable things. Um, it's hard to deal with that. It doesn't matter if you are their parent or their good friend. It's if they're withdrawing to conserve energy.
Yeah,
They're withdrawing to their special interests to escape from things. And if you find that they are withdrawing so much that they hardly ever communicate with you, it might be that they are struggling a lot. And it's
mm,
always important to approach that in a kind way, where rather than enforcing and pushing the interaction onto them in a forceful way,
yeah,
because that's a good way to push them away even further and
yeah,
make them isolate themselves in their rooms and stuff like that. Just provide an environment that's comfortable and relaxed and non-intrusive, and just ask them questions that aren't sort of your typical questions that you ask people. How was your day? You can say how was your day. It's not like you can't say that. It's just if you take an interest in the intricacies of their day and what they've said, rather than sort of going over blanket, things like you would with any other child. Kind of like approaching them like they're a little adult. Like you need to have an actual conversation with them in order
yeah,
to grasp their interest. I think as well, there's always aspects of um, shutdowns, which is basically a state where an autistic person becomes quite dissociated. Um, so it's usually characterized by going very non-verbal, and because of the difficult, the sort of uncomfortability with making eye contact, having a shutdown can um, prevent the person from actually speaking. And I have them as an adult, so I know that it's not an intentional thing. It's always important to give the autistic child or person space if
hmm,
they're not responding. Just give them an extra 5 seconds, extra 10 seconds, and don't stare at them when to respond and say that they're being rude.
yeah,
Because that's a great way of making them do it more often, because
yeah,
it's associated a lot with social anxiety and not knowing what to say.
yeah,
Um, a lot of it is just making them feel comfortable, and it can be very hard to have a child and not feel like you're connecting with that child anymore. But it is always good to remind yourself of the actual things that could be going on in their head and could be going on at school, or in any sort of situation in their life. It can be extremely difficult, and having that awareness and willingness to create that nice, nice, calm, slow environment can
yeah,
be the best way of coping with that.
yeah. It makes them feel safe, I guess. I noticed with my son that often, I mean, he's still just 10, but sometimes if you ask him a question, he would seem not to answer it at all, and people don't give him time. Even his teachers go on, move quite quickly
Yeah,
um, to the next thing, even members of his family. But what we find is when we give him that few more seconds, like you said, he shows that he's been using that time to process and to think of an answer and to respond and to be connected. But it doesn't look like that, and I guess it's really easy as parents to just assume after a few seconds he's not going to answer, move on to the next thing, and that leaves him feeling, well, you've asked me a question and now you're not giving me even time, you're not really interested in the answer, are you? So it's really important just to be aware of that, isn't it? And of how we might unconsciously or unwittingly be closing down the child when we want to open them up.
pressuring them. Yeah, it's it is difficult, and I mean myself, I work as a special needs teaching assistant in mainstream SEN schools, and sometimes I'm a little bit um, sort of frustrated and bit annoyed with life or the way that the day's going, and sometimes I can be a little bit pushy in terms of getting them to answer. But I think it's always important to be easy on yourself. Like, try not. I think the best thing to do is to try not to put any of that expectation to um, any of the expectations that you would have on normal neurotypical kids onto autistic children. That processing time becomes shorter and shorter as we get older. We still need processing time depending on our mental state, but it's literally it's a very complex thing that goes on when we try to communicate with people. We have
Yeah,
to understand what they're saying. We need to process that into what this thing that they're talking about is, draft up a response in our brain, and then put it out.
yeah,
It's very much a slower process.
yeah,
I suppose best way to do it is if you're like watching TV with them, that's probably the best place to have a conversation. Just say, so what do you think of this? And then just go back to watching TV. And if they don't reply, then ask them again.
yeah,
But maybe that's not the best example, but it's just having that step back of expectation for them to reply instantly,
yeah,
and showing that in your body language can be a good way
yeah.
of opening that communication up.